anointed for today is from the longest psalm of the Bible, Psalm 119. And I thought, since we're a ways away from the Athanasian Creed, maybe we should speak it together. But then I decided not to. But one verse I want you to look at is that one that's about halfway through. And it says, "Great peace have those who love your law. Nothing can make them stumble." It's an important verse. I mean, think about what I'm saying. If you love God's law, nothing can make you stumble. So first of all, you got to ask the question, well, what is God's law? It's not just a system of rules and regulations. See, that's the way we think about law, because that's what our laws tend to be, right? We make laws about the rules in our house, or the laws or rules in our classrooms, or the laws or rules even in our church. I wonder what life might be like if we thought about law the way God thinks about law. Because, see, for God, law is not really a system of rules. Law is a picture of the good life. For God, law is not a way of doing as much as it is a way of being. Think about this. Bert and Bonnie can follow along with this pretty well. Think about a Florida beach, right? You guys love Florida. But think about a nice Florida beach in the heat of summer. Now, when you're down there on the beach in the heat of summer, what you do is you get up to go out and walk on the beach and you put on your wool sweater and your galoshes, right? Of course not. And neither would there need to be a law against wearing wool sweaters and galoshes on the Florida beach. You just wouldn't wear those things because, well, it's stupid, right, to wear stuff like that. Likewise, God created this beautiful world for us. And He gave us His law because in our sin-fallen state, we can't always tell what's good or what's bad. We would be those stupid people wearing the wool sweaters and the galoshes walking down the beach in the heat of summer. And if you were doing that, you would find yourself to be itchy and hot and uncomfortable. And if the lifeguard came up to you and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but wool sweaters and galoshes are illegal on this beach in the summer. You're going to have to change into these light cotton clothes that I brought for you and these sandals." Would you hate them and argue with them? Or would you thank them? Would you be so thankful that you could take off that sweater and those galoshes and put on this nice light clothing that's so much more comfortable? Wouldn't you rejoice that you don't have to trudge through the sand in the heat and the discomfort of that wool and those boots? Well, that's how God's law is. It was designed by God for us to have joy and comfort and fulfillment in this world. It does not, and it was never intended to limit us. Rather, it frees us. And yet we struggle with that truth because we are impatient, impudent people. We are short-sighted, arrogant people. The wool sweaters and the galoshes, well, those are just the stupidities in our lives that were easy. They were close at hand. It's that stupid affair that you had with a person that you didn't even really like, or the jealousy that you had over things that weren't given to you for good reason, or the selfish anger you had about something that you honestly didn't really even care about. It's the seeking of the worldly accolades for doing the things with the gifts that God gave you. God requires patience and thought and humility. So rather than wait for the proper attire for the beach walk of life to be given, we put on our wool sweaters and our galoshes and plod off through the sand. Habakkuk was a prophet of God to the people of Judah. And it was not an easy job. It was a difficult time because the fall of Jerusalem to Nebuchadnezzar was imminent. And guess what the people of God were asking? Well, where's God in all of this? Have you ever noticed that people who wallow in sin like a fat man at an all-you-can-eat buffet become indignant when they have to face the consequences of their sin? It would be so refreshing to have someone say, yeah, Pastor, I had that one coming. But I rarely hear that. Most often I hear those complaints. I hear, why would God do this to me? Well, Habakkuk was complaining too. His is a bit more nuanced. It's a complaint. It's just couched in really nice words. How could God allow this evil, godless nation of Babylon to capture his people? O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not hear? Or cry out to you violence and you will not save? Why do you make me see iniquity? And why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. Habakkuk knew Psalm 119. He knew that verse. Great peace have those who love your law. Nothing can make them stumble. And he knew that his people had not loved God's law. They had pulled on their woolen sweaters and slipped on their galoshes and taken off down the beach. They had decided that they knew better than God. Just as we so often decide that we know better. And then we complain when we find ourselves hot and itchy. And the Lord answered Habakkuk's complaint. He told him to write this beautiful verse from the Lord. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by his faith. It's not going to be quite so beautiful when you find out what it means. Because the one who has a puffed up soul is a little more sick than you might expect. That word in the Hebrew that we translate as puffed up actually comes from a Hebrew word that means a large tumor on one's anus. Think about that one. When you think you know more than God. When you're about to complain to him about the way he's doing things in your life. When you've got your wool sweater on and your galoshes and you're trudging down the beach, your soul is like a huge anal tumor. On the other hand, the righteous shall live by faith. That is to say, those who trust God's law, God's way of doing things in your life, will never stumble. They will live by their faith, and in God, all things will work for their good. By the way, Babylon did conquer Judah, took them captive. But that was not a bad thing, because Babylon protected God's people from the horrid Assyrians that would have stamped them out of existence. And Babylon later conquered Assyria, and the people of God, some 70 years later, in God's time, in God's way, were returned to the promised land. And there the Messiah was born, where he would die on a cross and pay for all the sins of all God's people. See, that's why we are able to walk in God's way. To live by faith. To walk in God's law. You may choose not to do so, but you have been given the gift of righteousness. The baptismal waters have made you an inheritor of Christ's righteousness, and you are now able to walk in his ways. So, for heaven's sake, take off that stupid wool sweater and slip off those galoshes and leave them behind, and come to the waters and rejoice at the banquet.